everyone. My name is Natasha Mullen. I'm a licensed professional counselor of mental health. And today we're going to talk about substance abuse and substance use disorder. I have a special guest, Rosemary Baughman. Rosemary, can you introduce yourself?
I sure can. Hi, Natasha. I'm so glad I'm here. Hello, everybody. My name's Rosemary Baughman. I'm a licensed clinical social worker as well as a certified addictions counselor. And my home base for work is actually in Milford.
Awesome. Milestones is currently offering telehealth. I didn't mention that. So we're actually offering telehealth throughout the state. However, we don't specialize in substance abuse or substance abuse disorder. And so that's why we have Rosemary here to help share some of her tidbits and tips. Today, we're going to talk about how to help families, how to help loved ones who have someone who is struggling with substance abuse or substance use disorder. Just going to start with some statistics. 9 million Americans aged 12 and older misuse opioids over a 12-month period. 59 million 12 and older use illegal drugs or misuse prescription drugs within the last year. 138 million Americans 12 and older drink alcohol. 28 million of them have alcohol use disorder, and 24% of those drug disorders have an opioid disorder, including prescription pain relievers and painkillers. So the last time we actually talked about statistics about drug use, we talked about how it affects our youth. And today we're going to talk a little bit more about how it affects our loved ones, the people who are directly in relationship, whether it's families, friends, co-workers, and how it affects our own mental health, just trying to support someone who has substance use. Rosemary, you have anything to add with that?
Let's just have an open discussion about it. I have lots of information, but I don't know what anybody's kind of curious about and what's kind of in their lives right now.
Does anyone have any specific questions before we kind of jump in? Okay, if not, feel free to put your question or comment in the chat. One of the things that we know when a relative or someone we know is struggling with addiction, our first instinct is to jump in and help and to fix, to make it better, to change things, to control the situation. But in reality, we are not able to control the situation. We're not able to control that person. And in fact, that person often doesn't have control themselves. And so sometimes we often think that people may use drugs because they don't have enough willpower to change, or maybe they lack moral or values, or they want to get back at us, or they could stop if they want to, we often hear. But in actuality, a lot of people who are addicted to substances or have substance use disorder really have a hard time changing. They really feel like they are out of control. And in fact, many feel like they are dependent on that drug, that their body needs it, whether they started using it as a coping skill, a coping mechanism, a way to relieve stress, or however, then their body becomes very dependent on it. And then it feels almost like it's a part of their survival. So once again, being someone who cares for this person or loves this person, you can imagine what that is like, to be that outside person looking in and seeing the person that they care about so much that is struggling. Rosemary, any thoughts on that?
So I wanted to share a little bit about that, if that's okay with you, Natasha.
Absolutely.
So
Absolutely.
I want to qualify a little bit. I have both professional and personal experience. And it's sad to say that unfortunately, as you spoke earlier, so many of us lose this battle. We lose this battle no matter who was there to help us. My most recent story, sadly, is I lost a niece 3 months ago to opioids and due to overdose. and she had a 10-year battle. She was 30 years old. My sister did everything she possibly could. The family did everything they possibly could. All these things that we think are going to help, even to the point of letting go, which was the biggest suggestion. We have to make these decisions ourselves to get better, and rescuing doesn't help. Unfortunately, letting go doesn't always work either. You know, sometimes the body gives out, as it did for my niece. So, but again, both studies show and historically that the more we do let go and let people have their own consequences for the behavior associated with the disease, the more likely they're going to hit a bottom, so they'll look at themselves. But when we rescue, which again, it's in our nature, we want to help people, we want to rescue. When we rescue, it doesn't provide an opportunity to look at ourselves. There's a dual edge here, unfortunately. There's a behavioral piece, but there's the mental health piece where the addiction is physical, it is psychological, it is something that some of us are born with, some of us are not. Some of us transition into, there's lots of schools of thought to that, which it's not important so much what you believe, but it goes back to what you just shared, Natasha, is go back to the old commercial, if anybody's ever seen it. I didn't wake up dreaming I wanted to be an addict. Nobody dreamt that. We dreamt about being the president, being a football player. Nobody dreamt that. However, when we get to that point as caregivers, as support people, we get angry because we think, we know who you are. We know this is not you. You're this beautiful person. Yeah. Support groups, there's tons of wonderful support groups out there to help navigate finding those healthy boundaries that can help that person in a better way than rescuing, such as Al-Anon, Nar-Anon, what's the other one? I can't think of it. I'll get back to you on that. All those types of things can help us find those boundaries. Mm-hmm.
Can you speak a little bit? I often hear that letting go and tough love. I often hear that this is the, can you speak a little bit about what does tough love even look like? As far as an addict goes, we'll have to take it scenario by scenario. So for example, say you're in a work environment and a coworker of yours, is out drinking a lot. We'll just use alcohol at the moment, out drinking a lot at night, but showing up at work, doing their work, but you're just starting to notice as their peer, not as their boss, as their peer, that they seem to be slipping. They seem to be coming in a little bit later. They seem to be forgetting to follow up with certain things. And so many of us don't want to get involved, and we're going to say nothing, and we allow that to happen. A couple of things we can do, which can be tough love, is like, hey, are you okay? I'm noticing this behavior. So you're offering an opportunity for them to talk about it. If they say no, you can certainly say, I need to share with you, I'm noticing this and it's affecting all of us, and I am going to need to go to the boss. And oftentimes we don't, because we feel that that's punitive, but it's really not punitive. It's like taking accountability, because oftentimes people are in this cycle, they're afraid to ask for help. But if we offer it, or if we put them in a position where they're kind of have some consequences, the likelihood raises. It's not absolutely written in stone. Tough love, for example, if it's a teenager in your home, having consistent rules, regardless, not letting it slide. If you have a curfew and you may think your kid's out there smoking pot, but you're not really sure, but the behavior's there, that consistency is really going to be helpful, because you're putting their back up against a wall that they're going to have to figure it out. And that's, I think, like tough love and letting go. So if, for example, you have your 20-year-old and he gets arrested for a DUI, don't go pick him up. Let him find his own way home. And I know that sounds harsh. However, he got himself there. He's going to sit in that jail cell overnight, and then he needs to figure out how to get home, and he needs to go to court by himself, and he needs to pay those bills. And it's hard. I got to tell you, from an emotional level, if it's your child, if it's your sister, to do it is a whole lot different than to talk about it, which is where having that support system for yourself is so, so important. And I was also thinking too, you always hear about this enabling. And I know one of the things that usually comes, especially I could see it play out as a mother and a child, where you might find yourself making excuses or even trying to cover up the behavior in the sense of you're thinking that you're helping. You may maybe call out or make excuses for school while the kid may not be showing up, or things like that. Just as a mother, you're thinking, okay, I'm going to try to protect my child, and but not understanding that this is enabling behavior. I can imagine the difficulty in setting those boundaries as far as, okay, being consistent, and this is what I'm not going to do. I cannot allow myself to do this, or even financially, like giving money and stuff. I remember telling a client, the other day, like, you can't love someone enough to make them change. And I think that his standpoint was, as long as I'm there for her and I'm giving her money, that she's not having to get it from other places and different things like that. And I understand the thinking behind it, but him not understanding that he's enabling this young lady to continue, her drug use.
Well, and the fear behind that too, Natasha, is the fact that if they'll get it from someplace else, and that's a reality. People will continue to find somebody to enable them, which makes it even harder to have that decision. Well, at least if I can see them, then I have some control over the situation, is what it feels like. There's not a real truth to that. Or maybe there's a little bit of a truth, but it's not going to change the situation. But people will seek out those enablers. It's not a conscious thing. It's just we all need to get our needs met. And the need for an addict is to get the next fix, whether it's drugs, alcohol, whatever that happens to be. They will find a way to get that. But the more we can close those doors so that they can look inside and realize that they have the strength to move towards this and to change. But the message in their brain is they don't believe that. They believe they're doomed to this. They believe that this is going to be the rest of their lives. And then, of course, they're going to turn around and blame you because you didn't give me money. I went to jail for 6 months because So again, makes it harder and harder and harder. Mia, totally, you know exactly what I'm talking about, Mia. And it's hard. It's really hard.
Yeah. And I was thinking as well when you were saying that, in so many situations, like we hear about the different programs, like the Al-Anon and some of the support programs that you were sharing, but just on a general basis, like what should we do just personally? Like, for instance, if I find out that one of my loved ones may be addicted to drugs or whatever, what are some things that I can do to help me kind of process, because it definitely would affect me. Now they're out there and they're they feel like they're out of control and they're making decisions or choices based off of that feeling of being out of control. But yet, as a family member, as a person who loves them, what can I do to support myself as I'm trying to help support them in the best way that I can?
And that's a great question. And that's exactly what those support groups are. They are not to help the addict. They are to help us, because addiction affects one person who's addicted affects 10 people around them. I don't know if you know that statistic.
Wow.
Yep, affects 10 people around them, whether it's work, family, whether just going into the grocery store and maybe taking something that's not yours. It affects so many people. So we do have to take care of ourselves, and because what happens is that addict person that we love so much that has this problem consumes our time. So when we have this support group, we do learn to look more at ourselves, and we do learn to take care of ourselves, such as, okay, what's a great coping skill for me? Well, I enjoy walking. Okay, let's incorporate that. And while we're walking, get thinking to ourselves, if we start drifting off of how can I help this person, come back to, well, how am I helping me? Because the other piece of that is we take care of ourselves and we get healthier, that person in our lives will notice that. And when we shift that apple cart and those dynamics, we're also a visible demonstration to ourselves and to others. And plus that we can survive no matter what happens. Going back to what I said about my sister on a very personal level, she's devastated. Don't get me wrong. but she has not stopped living her life because she started in this support system to take care of herself prior to my niece's death. She's still grieving like a mom would, and the guilt is there, but there's definitely more pieces of she knew she did everything she possibly could, and she did to any human being. So that's where it comes in, that she was able to continue to live her life as many of us can and love her, but love her with detachment. So we learn to love without investing and making and owning it emotionally. And that's where the self-care comes in.
I remember when I used to work with children of alcoholics, one of the first things that we would work on is education and them kind of understanding substances and how they affect the body, and how, because a lot of times children are like, if you love me enough, why can't you stop? Like, why am I not important enough or valuable enough to you? So I would guess gaining knowledge just about substance abuse and substance use disorder would also be helpful. And I'm sure that's what those groups do, because sometimes you do feel that it's personal. Sometimes you do feel as, why can't I be important enough for you to stop or for you to make these changes?
Absolutely. Education is really important. And that takes me to another thought. Prevention is huge. Prevention, we are finding more, we're such a reactive society. Let's deal with the problem. Well, let's deal with it ahead of time. And more studies are showing that if we can give parents the skills before the problem, we are putting off people trying and experimenting with drugs and alcohol, at least till their brain is formulated at 25, which, although I know our legalities are 21 and we go off to war at 18, none of it makes any sense when our brain really isn't formulated till we're 25. However, but prevention, so say, for example, you're in a family situation and your 15 or 16-year-old is already having some issues, but you have a 7, 8, 9, 10-year-old still in the household. You can also be super proactive by setting things in motion with them to hopefully avoid that. Or say you have a family member and you have younger children under the age of 13. There's a couple of wonderful programs out there that can help. Guiding Good Choices is one of them. It helps with limits and it helps open conversations. If we can open conversations prior to the fact, and then educate about drugs and alcohol and what it does do to our brains, that is also proven to be very effective.
And I just wanted to add with that, and I don't think you could start early enough. I know before it used to be, you were thinking of your 7th and 8th graders, but I think it's a lifelong, it should be lifelong education. I don't think that you could start early enough with the
No, I agree 100%. Yep.
The prevention piece. Yes, absolutely.
Yeah. And it's really about open conversations is what the prevention piece is about. We're afraid to talk about things like this because maybe we don't know. So if we don't know, we now know that there's more and more information available to get, and so Natasha can provide information, I can provide information. And then when we're not sure, we put it out into other resources. So yeah, there's just so much out there. We can maybe not beat this disease, but we can certainly take a big chunk out of it.
Yeah. And I like what you said about the conversations, because the conversations could start really early. Of course, it would be different because it would be age appropriate. I think sometimes parents fear that, I don't want to put this in their mind. I don't, but it sounds like you're saying, no, tackle this thing, start those conversations, start that preventive conversations and start it early.
Absolutely. And there's incredible children's books out there if people aren't sure how to start it early. And it does talk about just what do we put in our bodies. And it can go, so it combines food, and say if mommy or daddy has a medication, well, that's medicine, and why we don't, because so much of that is a huge risk at home, is just somebody else's medications. But yeah, there's lots of tools out there. If you're not sure how to start that conversation, they can absolutely help you with that.
And previously we talked about coworkers, and we've also talked about children. What about like spouses and partners? Like someone who's in your home that is an adult, that you're unable to kind of make rules for, or be like any special specific things that you could do if it was like your spouse or partner, someone that's living in your home?
Absolutely, Natasha. There's definitely a lot of things you can do with that. And then that's the term I used earlier, was detach with love. It's the same thing. You can't tell them what to do. Obviously, they're an adult. However, there's certain behavior you can accept by changing your behavior. So, for example, if you say you're the person who cooks dinner at that night, and it's 5 o'clock, dinner's ready, it's been a plan, and the person doesn't show up, my suggestion is go ahead and eat dinner, clean it up and put it away. It's little things like that. There's a lot of times people will wait, or they're worried, oh my gosh, is he in a car accident? And we do worry. And there's no way to take that away 100%, but we can worry less and we can take control of what we're going to do. So that's one example. If they're homesick and they say, call me out of work today. No, sorry, I can't do that. You know, those types of things you can do. I'll tell you a story going way, way back. People that I know had started Al-Anon. There was an alcoholic in the home, and it was a shock to the family because they didn't understand what Al-Anon and AA and alcoholism was. And it was two parents, the father and the mother, and the father had a drinking problem, and the mother was just trying to understand how to stop enabling this person, and to stop accepting certain behaviors. And there was no violence involved. It was just rude behaviors, not coming home from work, not paying their portion, threatening behaviors. And so one day the mother walked in, and the dad had the stove open and the gas on, and his head laying on the oven door. And there was a child involved, an older child, like teenage child. And the mother walks by, turns off the gas, steps over him, and walks out of the room. Well, the child was devastated. Oh my God, she's going to kill herself. And the mother said, the windows are all open. There's no air. He's fine. She said, I shut off the gas. And then she left him be. Now, I know that sounds kind of shocking, but it was him saying, you need to take care of me. And her saying, no, you need to take care of yourself. Because it wasn't a true suicide attempt. It was very attention seeking. And those are, as dramatic as that sounds. Now, at the same time, if it's a suicide attempt, if it's an active suicide, I would never suggest that. I would absolutely say call 911, get someone involved. That was not the case in this particular situation. It was just sounded like a dramatic one I wanted to put out there. Same thing, you know, if say there's a loan taken out, and that person's responsible for that loan, and your name's not on the loan, of course, don't pay the loan for them. Those little things that we do. Don't drink with that person. If you don't have a drinking problem or a drug problem, my suggestion is consider not drinking and drugging. If that works for you, if it's not a problem for you, because a lot of times too, we will find people will join the other person, figure it's the only way that they can get connected, even if they don't have a problem. That's another area I would kind of really steer clear from. Just stop doing it.
And I think drinking is a big one, especially for that, because, you know, even though you are able to manage and control, and you could have a drink here and there, but you know that your partner or your spouse or whoever has a major issue. Yes, I think that you drinking along with them is sort of enabling too, because how can you say, hey, you know, this is an issue for you if I'm doing it as well. You know, even if it's on a smaller scale and you're able to manage it. So yeah.
Right. And I have no problems with people want to drink or don't drink. However, in this type of situation, it does make it very difficult if you're joining that person. So I'm just suggesting consider not. I mean, if it's not a problem for you, it's pretty easy not to.
Right. Absolutely.
Having alcohol in the home is also an enabling action. Absolutely. It is.
Yeah. And it's so interesting because I can imagine it's so many fears and worries for that person, that the person is just doing what they may think is best at that time, not realizing that they're enabling this behavior. They're enabling this behavior. And I always go back to the money thing, because that seems like a big thing of, you know, giving money, allowing them to use family money or personal money that is in conjoint with your funds or whatever to do drugs, or giving your children money knowing that, you know, they're using it for that purpose and things. Just so I think of financial, it always comes to my mind first as a number one way of enabling.
Absolutely. And as adults living in the same house, if that's an issue, you certainly can get yourself a different bank account. You can get yourself off of credit cards if you choose to stay with this person. And many people do. Some people choose to leave, but many people do not. And you can live there and take care of yourself. And the financial piece is huge, especially say it's a family. And one of the adults is in an active addiction and they have these small children. What's that other person to do? There, a lot of times it's not the option to leave. And it's also oftentimes not the option to kick somebody out because maybe there are some pieces that they are still giving to the family. And so we want to encourage those pieces and discourage the other ones by the way we respond. And on a given day, I have to tell you, you're right, Tasha, it's about fear. We're terrified. We're terrified of what's going to happen to this person. And living in that on a daily basis is such a stressor, which goes back to what you said, we have to take care of ourselves as that caring person. So even if you don't go to a formal support group, getting help with therapy, talking to somebody else who may understand, who you can bounce things off of, getting some healthy self-care, some meditation, yoga, just sitting outside, reading a book, anything to feed yourself with some healthy interactions.
Absolutely. And I'm going to go to this question again, but I didn't want to lose my train of thought. One of the things I also noticed in families, specifically in families, but I'm sure in other relationships as well, is the secrets. Like everybody knows this big elephant is in the room. Everybody knows that this is going on. The parents try to act like the kids don't know that dad has an issue, or mom may try to minimize it so dad doesn't notice that the son has an issue, or whatever the case may be. It's like this big family secret, and this elephant is like sitting in the middle of the living room, and everybody's trying to act like this is not going on, you know, whether they're minimizing, whether they're making excuses, whether they're justifying the behavior. Oh, he just had a loss, so that's why he's drinking so much, or whatever the case may be, but just ignoring this elephant in the room.
Yeah, and we do. That's historical, because which is why it's considered a family disease, the disease of addiction. And the reason it's considered a family disease goes back to because it does affect everybody. The person who's addicted to drugs or alcohol has that piece of the disease. The rest of the family has this emotional piece, this codependency piece, this need to kind of keep it in our circle because mentally we don't believe that there's anything out there to help. We also have this perception that it's only us. And that goes across the board for mental health and addictions. The stigma is still there, and we're constantly trying to break that, which is what these type of conversations are for. Hopefully somebody will hear, oh my gosh, your family sounds like mine. Because unless somebody in those enclosed families hears that, the secret's going to stay there, and they're going to keep walking over that elephant, and they're going to keep walking over that elephant. And that's another thing that somewhat a loved one can do, is start talking about the elephant. Look, I know you're there. Look, I know you just stole my prescription. I know you did it, dude, you know, and then let's talk about it. The first thing, 9 times out of 10, they're going to get in your face. It's going to get real scary because they're going to try to get you to back down. And you got to stand your ground, of course, being safe. Don't misunderstand. I'm not suggesting that someone's going to threaten to hurt you, but people will do anything to deflect because they're in a very frightened place as well.
Absolutely. We have one question here. Can you talk on the enabling differences between genders, the male versus the female addict? Is there any difference in enabling certain, depending on the gender? So I guess I'm thinking if it was a woman who was an addict, would it be different in enabling and what that would look like versus a male and enabling a male who was an addict?
I'm trying to picture what the difference would be. Could you give me some scenarios, whoever asked the question? Because I'm not really sure that I can consider a difference at this point. And are we talking about an adult or a child? Or does that matter?
Both.
I'm sorry, Alvin, was it you?
Yes, can you hear me?
I can, go ahead.
Yeah, I'm talking both adult and child. As far as, you know, as a a father, dealing with a daughter, you would be more protective, I would think. And then, as a male, you're more willing to give that tough love.
Okay. So if we're talking about children, then my stance would be no, it wouldn't be I don't think it'd be any different either way. I think it depends on the person where you're going to put those enabling behaviors and change them. But if we have children in our home and they're male and female, the rules should be the same. The expectation should be the same. They should, and everybody should be very clear on them. Now, it can be age-related difference. So I'm going to allow my 17-year-old do something I'm not going to allow my 12-year-old to do for sure. Gender, I don't really think so, Alvin. I think, okay, curfew is this time, dinner is this time, your chores are this, and it's those consistencies that are going to be really helpful. So then they know the expectations so that when something does happen, okay, this is what we also need to discuss that. If I found out you're drinking, or I found out that you were at a party and you were using ecstasy or smoking pot, these are going to be the consequences. And these are the conversations we need to have ahead of time so they're not surprised. The other piece to that, that's also a valuable conversation with our younger people, is to also let them know if they're at a place and they end up making a poor choice and they get drunk, call me. I will come pick you up. I will not talk about that at that time, but we will discuss it the next day, because kids are faced with choices and sometimes they're not going to make the right choice. But we want to, so that's not quite enabling, that's teaching them that they don't have to do it again. Does that help, Alvin?
Yes, it does. Yeah, my part. I've been to family support, and I noticed the difference. When you're talking to a daughter and their means of, getting a drug, turning to criminal acts such as prostitution and all that. That I noticed, being more protective, kind of was the commonality in the room.
Sure, and that's a big fear for parents because, right now, the sexual trafficking and human trafficking, and that's the way, unfortunately, our young women sometimes can pay for their drugs, and it's very sad. I will tell you that men are doing it the same. We just don't talk about it as much.
Yeah. What's interesting, I think what you're saying, Rosemary, is right on the head as far as the rules and everything should be consistent and should be the same. But I also wonder, it also probably would be the relationship you have. So if you are already very protective of your daughters, very protective of your girls, and so-called tough on your boys, I could see how it would be much harder for you to be as as strict with your daughter if you already have that type of relationship with your daughter. One of the questions was your thoughts on marijuana, because that's always a big thing. Legal, not legal? Is it addictive? Is it not? What are your thoughts on that, Rosemary?
So the research that I'm aware of, I don't care about legal or illegal. That's neither here nor there. I do know that marijuana is absolutely addictive. It is not addictive to everybody, just like alcohol and other drugs. It's absolutely psychologically and physically addictive. Whether or not it's a gateway drug, there's still the argument still out on that. I don't know. My experience is people evolve to the drug or alcohol that they're going to choose that works for them. And oftentimes they will try different things. So that's why we sometimes say marijuana is a gateway drug. That's some people stay with marijuana. I have counseled people who have been very addicted to marijuana. I do think there's a medicinal value, just like all our other opioids. I think there's a medicinal value to it. So there's not like a cut and dried answer. At this point in this state, it is illegal. It is mind altering. And even if it is legal, it's going to be illegal for children. So that's kind of my stance on that, is we still need to deter our children away from it, and then do screeners, just like we screen everything else. Is it affecting your life? How much are you smoking, or how much are you ingesting? Are you missing work? So we have screeners to see if it's a problem for people. Does that help?
Very good. Very good. Another question: how do you deal with family members who enable when you are already let them know what's going on and to stop? Example: mom shows tough love, mom doesn't give any money, mom sets boundaries, etc., but the family does not, because they don't have to deal with the everyday effects.
Yeah, that's a tough one. And unfortunately, there's no easy answer to that, because just like with the person who's struggling with an addiction that we can't change, we also can't change those other enablers. And that's very frustrating when one person's trying to really be helpful in a different manner. The only suggestion I have for that is, if you are attending anything, if you have pamphlets that you can share with them, educate them on why you're making this decision. That would be my biggest advice for that.
Any other questions? You know, one of the things that I always like to share, you know, when we talk about like alcoholism and addiction and things like that, Betty Ford, who started the first alcoholism treatment facility, one of the things that she said, and it really stood out to me, she said, I only drank one drink a day. I only drank one drink a day. She said, but I spent my whole day and night thinking about that one drink. And that really speaks a lot to addiction, because a lot of people think it's, you know, how much you consume or how often. And I know some people say, well, I can stop 3 months. I can stop 6 months. I can stop. And sometimes they can, but it's the way it consumes the mind, the need to have it, the need that to always be thinking about it, or planning your life around whether you're able to get that drink or whether you're able to get that drug or whatever. And so sometimes we can be misled of what addiction looks like, because some people can go periods of time where they may seem like they're okay, but it's the mindset as far as, and I think she really, you know, put it in plain English. She only drank once a day, one drink a day, but yet she thought about it all day long. It completely consumed her thinking. Any other thoughts? I don't see anything else in the chat. Any other thoughts? One of the things I will leave you with, and I'm not sure where this quote came from. It was from someone anonymous. So, but it says, this was from a former addict, and he was asked the question, what do you want your mom? How do you want your mom and sister to remember you? And his comment was, as someone who tried really hard to be someone he couldn't be. And that really, really stands out to me, because once again, how we started this conversation is, we think that if we love them enough, if we do all these things, if we control, if we just give them the break, if we just let them go here, or we make excuses, or we help them out in just these instances, that maybe that will be enough for them to change. But in all actuality, it's out of their control. It's not something that they're doing deliberate, or because they're weak, or because they want to hurt you, or because they don't love you enough. That we truly want to look at this as something that is truly a disorder, that is truly a disease. That is truly a disease. It looks like there's one more. Can you share any advice on gambling addictions? Do you think this stems from mental health, possibly drug addiction?
I can. I want to touch on what you just said real quick before I answer that question, or I have a comment on that, is the fact that even though we're talking about all this detachment, and don't forget the word love, detach with love, because this person is suffering from a mental health disorder. They didn't plan it. They didn't plan to be, you know, not showing up at work, or not taking care of their kids, or not paying the bills. So keep in mind, to love this person, just find a different way to love them. Instead of enabling, we'll detach with love and we'll help them. As far as gambling addiction, that is also, it's an identified mental health disorder. Yes, it is. It's the same behaviors. It's the same draw. It's the same obsessive thinking as it is with any other drug. Unfortunately, gambling is a real tough one.
And unfortunately, with COVID, all types of addictions, whether it was porn, gambling, sex, whatever, has increased. You know, unfortunately, you know, with people being more stressed, people having more time, people not having access to family and friends. And so a lot of online gambling, a lot of video addictions have increased, you know, just because of, you know, just the last couple of years of all the stress and things that, you know, we've been going through. So yes, I agree. You know, the behaviors, the thought process, the mindset is all very similar kind of regardless of the substance.
Right.
Is all very similar. Any other questions or thoughts or any final comments, Rosemary, before we kind of close this out?
I just want to thank you. This is an exciting platform, Natasha, that you started this, and it just brings it all back to, let's just keep having conversations. Let's support each other, and we can make these changes. And if anybody needs my contact info, Natasha, please feel free to share it. If I can direct anybody.
Do you want
Can
to
I put it in the chat? I can.
Put your information in the chat. So that would be great. I think another big piece of this too, while Rosemary's putting in the chat, is she stressed a lot about making sure that we're taking care of us, making sure that we're getting what we need, making sure that we're practicing self-care. And that is really important. Making sure that we're aware of our own mental health, making sure we're aware of our own enabling behaviors, because we can't change or control that other person, but we can change and control what we're doing, and making sure that we're good, making sure that we're not enabling, and so it comes back to
what happened?
All right, is it not in? Oh, there it is.
Mm-hmm.
There it is. So can you still hear it? It looked like it got unstable. So
yeah, we had a quick bleep, but you're back.
Oh, good. So please get that information, write it down, or click on the link, share it with people. We all know someone with, just like Rosemary's had personal experiences. We've all had personal experiences. Mm-hmm. This is all closely related. And that's why I called it. It's all of us. It's not just that person over there or that race, that gender, it's everybody. It affects all of us. Mm-hmm. And so we're begging you to share this information to who you feel needs it. You have this information in case you need it for yourself or a loved one, but seek help. Seek help. And that's all I have. I hope this was very informative. I pray you have an awesome week and take care.